Attention, all curious minds, innovators, and trendsetters. It's time to pause, lean in, and get ready for an extraordinary journey as we dive deep into the fascinating realms of life, technology, entertainment, and business. Let's explore, learn, and grow together. Brace yourselves, for the next thrilling episodes of Hipther Talks is about to take off. Counting down from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And here we go.
Hi everyone, Zoltan here. We're back again this week, and today we are sticking to the gaming industry, and I have Peter Argerakis, CEO at Six Sigma Sports. Peter, it's nice to have you here.
A pleasure to be here.
All right, Peter. So before we dive into the questions, as our audience already is used to our style for 3 years now, and I'm happy to say that this is episode 102. We just reached 100 episode last week. So we like to invite our guests to say a few words about themselves, so we don't do the introduction because they know better what their life has been like. So Peter, just a few words about yourself and your company.
Sure. So my background is in traditional finance. I've been a market maker, investor, trader on the buy side and sell side in traditional finance. So working at hedge funds and investment banks. Recently, about a year and a half to 2 years ago, I pivoted full time to lead the startup Six Sigma Sports, where we're leveraging blockchain technology to reimagine the sports betting application. You know, personally, I've been involved in crypto on and off, originally exposed to it back in 2013. But really, it took several years to see the opportunity and to feel the urge to commit full time to it. So I think the cycles that we've seen since then and the developments in the space kind of created the right framework to make that decision. So I've been working on this since early 2022.
Oh, nice. I'm huddling since 2014, 15.
Okay.
So. All right. So considering your expertise in finance and blockchain, how do you interpret the current debate around decentralization in Web3, especially in the light of recent global developments with the ETFs being approved, etc.?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that the industry needs to address regulation. It's going to come within the regulatory perimeter. I think as far as decentralization is concerned, if we look back to when that concept was popularized in the crypto industry, and originally probably with Bitcoin, when we talked about decentralization, really we were achieving a couple main goals, right? Censorship resistance and permissionless access. Now, for something like Bitcoin, where you're in my opinion, it's striving to be a digital reserve asset, perhaps a form of money. Those are two critical characteristics, two defining characteristics. But then what we started to see is actors in the industry take that term of decentralization and start applying it, less scrupulously across a variety of projects. And initially, probably because the term itself imbued with it certain positive characteristics of cryptography and blockchain. Yeah. And then before long, though, it was used it was being leaned on because of this presumption that it perhaps also allowed a project to kind of operate outside of a regulatory perimeter, simply because the concepts involved here were not explicitly addressed before. It took a little bit of time, but I think it's pretty clear that we can't lean on the concept of decentralization to escape certain rules, certain frameworks, and nor is that, in my opinion, always what we should be doing, right? Because one of the as especially when we can probably get to it later with regards to our application, but decentralization is not always the strongest priority a project that uses blockchain technology should be aiming for. It might be, but it depends really on the use case and what you're trying to achieve. And what are we talking about really when we even say decentralization? Are we talking about the technology network, the framework? Are we talking about truly achieving a permissionless and censorship-resistant network? Or are we just talking about democratizing, access to an application, democratizing an industry, changing the value accrual equation? So I think the term has lost a little bit of its original meaning.
Yeah.
And we need to kind of clarify how we're using it and really what is the right balance that we need to strike. I think there's no way. Yeah, I think there's no way around addressing these topics as we move forward, because whether as an industry we like it or not, regulation is here. I think it's needed. I think clarity is needed most of all, and with clarity and visibility, then we can start moving forward.
All right. So in your opinion, what is there an ideal balance between decentralization and centralization for different blockchain applications, particularly in the financial sphere?
Yes, I think the balance will vary slightly. I mean, if we're talking about the financial sphere, I'd venture to guess that most applications operating within the financial sphere will be forced to navigate some degree of regulation. So whether we like it or not, even Uniswap not too long ago updated its code base to allow certain KYC implementations. I think we're going to be seeing more of that. So the balance, most of all, will really depend on the specific use case. And the risk-adjusted approach that projects will need to take. If you're really trying to create a form of money, something that can be used by anybody, anywhere, even if you're operating within an oppressive regime, for example, your risk-adjusted approach to navigating the regulatory framework might be a little bit more tolerant because of the use case you're serving. If you're in the entertainment segment of the market, which arguably we are in the entertainment segment of the market, our tolerance, we want to make sure we are on the right line of in terms of what kind of activity we can facilitate via our network. So I think really the purpose and the goals that you want to achieve will define where in that balance, what is the right balance for a given project.
All right. So from your experience, how can blockchain and fintechs and gaming companies, startups, effectively collaborate with the government authorities and somehow still foster innovation while ensuring compliance? Because this has been something we talked about for many years now, how maybe compliance is keeping innovation at a point where it cannot grow.
I think, in my experience in markets, I think what prevents growth is visibility and clarity, more so than where the line is exactly drawn. And I think in the US, for example, where we've seen, in my opinion, a lack of clarity has been very difficult for, the industry to move forward. Now, thankfully, and I have not played a big role in this, but thankfully we have many actors within the industry that are making sure the voice of the industry is heard, whether that's, people like Coinbase with their amicus briefs, in addition to their own litigation and other, even on the financial side, certain VC funds. But we do have loud voices within the industry. Ultimately, this will have to be legislated, and we need to make sure our voice is heard so that via legislation, we can get that clarity, we can get that visibility, and the industry can solve for those problems.
All right, tell us more about your project, because I'm very interested to hearing more about Six Sigma Sports.
Yeah, so we, as coming to the sports betting industry with a background in traditional finance, market making, and also
that's odd.
Yeah, it is odd. There actually, as we got more involved and started to learn more about the industry, and this is why we decided to commit to it, we actually saw lots of parallels to the market structure and how different in my old world, how different trading desks operate to how different sports books operate, and the relationship with the customer. And what we're doing is we're using blockchain technology, but we're reimagining really the application itself and the feature set of the application. And we're doing that in a way that also changes our relationship with the customer. We're really bringing the customer along for the ride and giving them access to the sports book in a new way, and in a way where they can participate in some of that value creation that they contribute to.
All right.
And I can go into the really one of the defining ways we're doing that is this feature called Be the House, and
All right.
that's where we actually open up the house functionality of Sportsbook, which would typically be a totally centralized function in most sports betting apps. And we open that up to user participation. So they can step into the shoes and provide liquidity to a market in a specific sports event and benefit from the position that a normal sportsbook would.
All right. So, as you mentioned, you have a background in traditional finance. So, what role do you foresee for how traditional finance and crypto finance will work together in advancing, of course, fintech and the blockchain industry?
Yeah, I think blockchain technology and fintech as a general term, using it here, but
Yeah.
we've already seen it, especially in countries like the UK, but we've seen it force the traditional banking industry to
Exactly
innovate and to actually meet customer needs. And I remember there were years where it would be very expensive and very slow to send a payment to a friend, even within the same bank, within the same country. And in certain countries, fintech kind of forced some change there. However, globally, this is still a very fragmented and not ideal process. So I think blockchain is kind of the second wave by virtue of speed and transparency and the settlement that it can facilitate, of actually forcing traditional financial intermediaries to step up that performance. And there's going to be ways that blockchain is used that we probably can't foresee, but I think that's kind of the table stakes immediate benefits we can get.
All right. We have yet to wait for a day to see when you are sending from your traditional bank transfer via blockchain.
Yeah, I think it will probably come, but we need a few more things to happen before that. And frankly, blockchain as an industry also needs to meet the needs of an ordinary customer, which it hasn't quite done yet, right?
Yeah.
So there's some UX improvements. There probably a couple functions we need to abstract and make easier before we really are at that point that you described.
All right. So, as an entrepreneur yourself, what advice would you offer to the new projects in the blockchain and crypto space, particularly regarding the complex legal and regulatory aspects? So, what's your best advice for them?
Yeah, I think my best non-legal advice is probably to focus on what differentiates what you're doing besides the fact that it's on a blockchain, right? I think there was a period where there was this thought where if we put it on a blockchain, it's automatically better. Or if you put it on a blockchain, you'll achieve decentralization, right? Not everything is automatically better on a blockchain. So let's be honest about that.
Exactly.
So think about, differentiation. And with regards to the regulatory and legal frameworks, coming from traditional finance, where we're used to navigating some of these regulations, but also, it's a very fluid space. So the simplest and best advice I could probably offer is don't close your eyes and hope for the best. I think it's important to be aware of the changes that have happened, the changes that are coming, and also realize that sometimes those changes will require a pivot in your own application and product. That should be one factor in your consideration. So I think it's it's a little, I've had a few conversations over the years where people are very excited a product and give zero consideration to actually, navigating it and getting it into a real world user's hands. So, I think, I think you have to, it's a very dynamic and fluid space. So you have to go into it with eyes wide open.
All right. So, what are your predictions, sticking to the blockchain? What are your predictions for the future of blockchain technology, and maybe also speak about the digital currencies in the coming years?
Yeah. So, I wouldn't say I'm an expert.
No need, no
in
problem.
this, but I do think I think stable coins will continue to play a big role. I think blockchain has a lot of interesting sectors where we'll see it being applied. I think we haven't seen the full impact of it in the in the artistic industries and in the royalty fields. I think there's a lot more that can be done there.
Yeah.
I think we're also gonna see it in the identity verification arena, because even prior to the recent developments with AI, that now we're introducing new challenges to identity verification. But I think we're going to need something with a cryptographic element to kind of play a role here, because the other technologies are moving quickly as well, and the traditional approach is not suitable. So I think those are a couple areas where we're still going to see further developments, and then specific industries like we're doing, but ways where people use the technology just to improve the current experience, just to improve the current applications and change the way value accrues in the system. So I think that's probably what comes off the top of my head.
All right. So what is motivating you personally in the field of fintech and blockchain? And what is your vision about the future of legal assistance in these areas?
Yeah. So motivating me personally, I mean, I first of all, I love markets. I came from one type of markets arena, and now we're involved in a different type of markets with sports betting. But what the fintech / blockchain / entrepreneurship opportunity here has also allowed us, I missed being creative, and I really love, the process of design. I love getting involved with the building and thinking about something, new. So that's what's most exciting to me, is really being in the seat again where you are applying creativity in what you're doing. So that's what's most exciting for me. As for the legal side of it, I think hopefully, I'm hoping, because it is painful now, but I'm hoping things do become clearer. I'm hoping there is some continued legislation that provides that visibility, where projects can really focus on their purpose and not waste resources, chasing all these legal questions that have no answers. So, I really am hopeful that we'll get to that phase, but it probably, in some countries it might require a change in the political appetite. In some countries it just requires the legislative process to work, but hopefully we will get there.
All right. So let's head back, or should I say, let's start speaking about the sports betting part. I'm really curious about this house mode, because you mentioned it earlier. So could you maybe say a few words about what is its impact on the sports betting landscape? Because it sounds very, very interesting.
Yeah, so to do that, I probably need to just give a little background on what currently exists in the sports betting landscape. So for those that are familiar, you have your traditional purely centralized sports book. So you go to a Bet365 and they take the other side of your bet, and they provide the service to all their customers. There is also another model in the traditional industry, before we even get to blockchain. That's a betting exchange model where individuals can go, they can make their own price and get a P2P style marketplace where the operator then just takes a fee on the back of that activity. I think the second model has had trouble really resonating with end users that are retail users for entertainment. I think most of the activity there is really done by market makers. And the reality is, I don't think most people want to really worry about whether 1.5 to 1 or 1.52 to 1 is the right price. Most people are not creating that price. Most people want to put on the directional risk, have fun doing so. And what we're doing though is we've reimagined a third option. And that option though is really by opening up the upside of the sports book. And that's what the house function is. So with the blockchain technology, obviously we're bringing more transparency. We're bringing speed of settlement. That's kind of like table stakes, as I would say. But with the house function, we are allowing the user, if they want, to take the position of the sports book, of a centralized sports book. So what is good about that position? And this is where I'll try to explain it without getting too technical into market making. But in reality, what a sports book does is, they have the opportunity to take bets across the outcome. So let's say a win-loss draw in a football match. But in doing so, not only do they benefit from capturing some of the vig, which is implied in the odds, right? So the profit margin of a sports book is actually in the odds you see. They do that, but they also have the benefit of offsetting that risk. So if Zoltan comes and bets on Chelsea and then Byron...
No.
Liverpool. There you go, Liverpool. And then someone else comes and bets on Chelsea, right? And let's assume that odds haven't moved too much, but just by virtue of being able to offset those two bets, I've partially offset some risk and theoretically got closer to actually what could be a risk-free positive outcome for the sports book, right? So in theory, if a sports book were to get bets across all three outcomes in a certain ratio at a certain pricing of odds, they could be in a position to make money no matter the outcome, right? That's the benefit of being in a sports book. Now, in reality, that doesn't always happen. In fact, it probably rarely happens perfectly. But over time and over many bets and many events, they are benefiting from having some offsetting risk. Most of the time capturing some of that vig, some of that profit margin, and then also being able to recycle that risk. So if I were to take $100 bet here and $100 bet here, in theory, on the first bet out, I have to put up $100 to take that bet.
Exactly.
If I have the other side as well, I can reuse my $100 to take another bet. This is also something that with the house functionality we allow, where the house functionality is essentially it's like an order book, but it's a queue management system where when you provide liquidity, if you if you get your capacity used with the incoming bets, you then can recycle a certain amount of the risk that you have left, depending on the exact ratio of those bets. So ultimately, what this does is it also gives sports bettors a way to engage with the activity. It's a new feature, and it's a way where they can participate in a way that some of the value of the sportsbook accrues to them. At the end of the day, we are opening up the profit center to engagement, right? So,
yeah, exactly.
We would seed it, we would be involved, but we are literally opening up the profit center so that our users can also be in a position to capture some of that value. It's not guaranteed, but just like sports books have drawdowns and have positive days, it's really the activity over time that earns you that profit. So it's, I think a lot of sports books in the traditional industry, they, to continually engage with their customer, to increase that lifetime value. They often resort to ancillary casino games and other tactics. We think it's amazing to actually, at the risk of opening up the profit center, but we think it's amazing to engage users in this way where they can capture some of that value, and also maybe even compound the social aspects of it, compound the community aspects of it by doing so. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
That's
So another question would be about how does Six Sigma Sports leverage blockchain technology, and you are also revolutionizing sports betting in a way. So what advantages does this bring to the users?
Yeah, so we're using it to create new features like this, and there are a couple more in the works, which
All right.
we're not talking about yet, but we have other ideas as well on the feature side. But going back to something I just touched on before, but to raise it again, is kind of, we are putting more control in the user's hands, right? And especially if you were to compare it to even sports betting that happens, a lot of sports betting happens in the offshore market, where your quality of operators really varies.
Yeah.
And oftentimes you do hear stories of trapped cash or weeks to extract capital. What we're offering is really the benefit of self-custody, which is something obviously unique to blockchain, and really that puts users in control of their funds, and they're in control of their funds at every point except when they're interacting with a bet, and settlement happens fast. It can happen in seconds, but we do have a safety buffer in there to just make sure the results are correct. But settlement can happen, in minutes. Ultimately, it might be happening in seconds once we get the technology mature enough. And so those are two amazing things. I mean, if you look at the traditional industry and even the traditional regulatory environment, one of the concerns to protect users is the custodying of funds. Well, we're not custodying funds. Users are in control of that. So I think that is one of the biggest things, is really the transparency that brings, and also the relative speed as well.
All right. So you guys also have a big emphasis on responsible gambling, as I've read.
Yeah.
And just want to know, how do you ensure user safety and ethical practices on your platform?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great transition, because I think some of these features we just described are naturally doing that by giving control to the users. Our application, though, in it as well, will have a set of tools, and that are not hidden in the fine print, but there will be tools there for users to further manage their activity on the app to a pretty controlling degree, above what is required by the licensing regime. So we want to make sure that education, we are explaining, education also plays a huge role, because we want our users to understand what really happens in a sports book. And not only can they see it, but they can experience it, they can benefit from it. So education plays a huge role. Having the right tools for users to control their activity is very important. And some of the benefits that the technology naturally provides in terms of the control it puts back in the hands of the users. I think those three things is really how I would summarize.
If they care.
Yes. If they care.
If they care. It's like these cookies buttons.
Yeah, I'm still very diligent about my cookies buttons. But I do notice how some people make it very hard and some people make it easy.
When GDPR kicked in, we had about 1 week to transfer our files from the server from New York to Amsterdam, and on our 20 websites to apply all the measures with the cookies and with everything. For what? For everybody just kicking upset.
Everyone.
Yeah, and that's it. Exactly. All right. So as a final question, how do you see the future of sports betting evolving with the integration of blockchain technology? Is this something that's going to totally change the industry?
I think we have a shot at totally changing the industry if we actually, because the business model that we're applying is different. But blockchain technology as a whole, I think at a minimum, when it's applied correctly in sports betting, at a minimum, it will raise the standard that customers experience, specifically around the payment rails and funding. And I think that is the minimum changes we should expect to see, and to bring a level of transparency that isn't there. We're going one step further and really tackling the whole business model of sports betting. So that's exciting as well. But yeah, I think there's definitely, given the sports betting is still an industry that has not innovated much. It has innovated in certain ways. We have in-play betting from the user experience, which is a different innovation, which probably has its pluses and minuses, if I'm honest. They've also been forced to innovate, or to really not, I wouldn't say innovate, I'd probably say spend resources on regulatory and compliance initiatives, which is necessary. But as an industry, the customer relationship, the way they approach managing their risk and chasing profit has not changed much in decades. So perhaps with Six Sigma Sports, perhaps we can also tackle the business model. But at the very least, it should definitely improve. Blockchain technology is well positioned to improve the user experience in sports betting.
All right, Peter, thank you so much for your time, and I really enjoyed it. I have to say, you are my top 3 sports betting people I've talked to, and given the fact that you're coming from the traditional finance sector, it's more amazing. So it seems that you really want to do something.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank you for our audience for sticking around. You know what to do, where to hit the button to subscribe. And we will be back next week. Thank you so much.
And that's a wrap for this section of Hipther Talks. Thank you for being a part of our journey today. Don't forget to tune in next week for more insights and discussions. Stay connected with us on Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and more. Until then, keep exploring and keep growing. We'll see you next time.